This is the Quadcast with Swanny and the Quadfather.
Hey, what is up, Warriors? It's the Quadfather here on the Quadcast with my good buddy, local 215 grower, Mark Swanson. Welcome to the show. How are you? I heard you brought a friend.
Aloha, Quadfather.
Well, aloha, Mr. Hand. Oh, there we go.
Aloha, Mr. Hand.
Aloha, Spicoli.
That kind of applies today, actually, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not just Swanny. Swanny is recruiting. He actually, the first booking ever on the Quadcast, Swanny has booked a guest. Who do we have today, Swanny?
We got my buddy Shannon Lewis from Humboldt County, Fortuna, California.
Oh, Mr. Hand. Welcome, Shannon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good morning, fellas. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. How come you're on the show? How did Swanny talk you into joining our Quadcast?
Oh, he posted about Murdoch Mountain, and I posted my distaste for it. That I'd watched a couple episodes and didn't like it, and he says, "Hey, I got this podcast. You want to come on? We're going to talk about it."
I love it. The confrontation turns into discussion. Wouldn't that be nice if that happened more in America?
That's how we fix things in Humboldt. Discussion.
That's
so
it.
Shannon and I are buddies from high school. We've known we were competitors. We went to rival high schools. And Shannon was a defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was quarterback. Of course, everybody knows that, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
So I remember this one game. I'll never forget this. It was may have been for league title in Fortuna. Big rival game. One of the first plays of the game, Shannon blasts me, knocked me out of the game. I remember laying on the ground and sucking wind so hard. And Shannon standing over me, taunting me, cheering in the crowd. I could hear the Fortuna side cheering. I was out of the game as I came running out or walking off the field.
I'd have been coming for your left, so you better talk to whoever was over there.
Right. My blind side.
Your blind side.
Yeah. But that only took me out one play, Quad. You should be happy to know. We came back and whooped Fortuna.
Whooped, yeah, but by 3.
Hey, it's a victory, right? So, and that's why Swanny has back trouble now, and it's all the what do they call it? The head trauma damage. You know, that's Swanny.
Yeah. CTE problem.
There you go.
Then Shannon and I played at College of Redwoods together, and we both have places up at Ruth Lake by Guy Fieri, and my buddy Shannon here is very tight with Guy.
Well, before we jump into that, Ruth Lake, Humboldt County, this is somehow related to Murder Mountain. Is all these kind of near each other, or what's up?
Yeah, so Humboldt is actually, Ruth Lake's in Trinity County, but it's right there. Is it in Trinity or Humboldt?
It's in Trinity, but it's close. It's close
right
to all that, yeah.
So in Eureka, it's a foggy place. And when I say Eureka, I mean Fortuna. Let's just say
Humboldt.
The coast.
The coast, right?
Yeah.
So Fortuna's on the coast, Ferndale, Eureka, Arcata, all that. And it's right by Humboldt State, but it's foggy. So we would have to go to the sun to get sun, and Ruth Lake is where a lot of people went. So that's, we all places up there.
So that puts you near this Murder Mountain. What is Murder Mountain actually? What area is it?
Okay, so that's going to be southern Humboldt. So it, as a crow flies, it's really pretty close to where we are. Now the whole area has become a growing region, right? If you're just talking about growing in general. So there's a little general store that's by Ruth Lake, and it's a pretty large general store. One section has groceries, and then 3/4 of it is a hardware store that has irrigation, everything you need to grow. I mean, it's not hidden, and we're not talking about now. I mean, this has always been that way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always been like a Home Depot on one side and all the groceries you need. And I was telling Shannon last night, we were talking, I've never gotten change there where it hasn't smelled like weed. I mean, for 30 years, right? I mean, everybody in there looks like, or smells like weed, and it's a place where growers go. In our place, up by the lake, we're constantly have to watch for people tapping into our water to grow on our property. It's probably changing a little bit now, but that's how it's been. So it's very close to Murder Mountain.
And you're close to the road too with your property. And it's funny that close to the road, you still have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And we sold off some property in, I think, 30 acres, maybe 5 years ago. And the guy he wasn't even hiding what he was doing. He just put up those growing tents kind of things and just, he went live. I mean, it was crazy.
Wow.
This was before. Yeah. I mean, I guess this 98 was when things started to change, but this guy wasn't hiding it at all.
Okay, well, let me set it up, and then I'll ask you guys, about your time growing up in this area. So, Murder Mountain is the story of basically marijuana cultivation from its beginning in Humboldt County, and how it's been impacted, just through the legalization, through the medical, just kind of how Murder Mountain created its own basically culture. And the first two clips are about that. And so I want to ask you guys how you guys ended up, because I imagine, I don't know, call me crazy, but I'll bet your parents were hippies. It's just that's my assumption. We'll find out after this.
I moved to Humboldt County in the very end of 1968, along with a bunch of friends, because land was cheap here. The first piece of land that I was involved in, we bought 40 acres for $11,000. This was the quintessential hippie life. Unfettered, with a quality and quantity of freedom not experienced by a lot of people.
A lot of people came up here just to get away from the materialism and the dishonest values that grip our culture and which are continuing to be the great disease of our times.
The Back to the Land movement was individuals who made choices to drop out and move to the country, to the land, to try to be self-sufficient. Our intention was to grow our own food, grow our own staples. Well, weed was a staple.
So that was back in 1968. So I was born in 65. So that was right around when I was just a wee one. Were you guys around during that time, 1968? Were you living in that area?
Shannon's family's, they're pioneers, actually. Shannon, tell us about your family.
Yeah.
My family came with the Transcontinental Railroad. My family has been here since the 1880s, which doesn't give me any more rights to it, but maybe it's more sentimental to me. But my grandson, that's 6 months old, he's, I would say, 8 generations of our family that's lived here, and 6 generations have been born here.
Oh, wow. So you guys were not necessarily part of the hippie crew that showed up.
No, well, we're the rednecks.
You're the original settlers, right? You guys were making your log cabins, and
I think it was settled a lot earlier than that. But we settled in Bull Creek, which is a place in southern Humboldt, and that's part of this area. But it's it's in the northern part of southern Humboldt.
Okay. And Swanny, what about you guys?
My family?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're settlers from Southern California.
You're transplants.
Transplants. So let me tell you about the area a little bit. So Shannon's family, I don't know this or not, but they could have been involved in logging. Logging was a huge industry. It's in the middle of the redwoods.
Still involved in logging.
Okay.
The family is.
So in the region it's where all the huge redwood trees are. Okay. People get sequoias and redwoods confused. The redwoods are the super tall trees that get maybe 300 feet high. And the old growth redwoods are large around, right? Many of those are gone now. They were harvested. But
many are still there, though, too.
Yeah, many are still there. The sequoias are more down in Central California, up in that region, I would guess. The other area was a fishing industry. The fishing industry was huge, salmon fishing, crabbing, right? So those are the two big economies. And with regulations, the logging industry took a huge hit, fishing took a huge hit, and it really knocked down Humboldt County's income, or the ability to make income.
Yeah.
So Shannon, your family was in logging?
My family still is in logging, but I got out about 15 years ago my dad and I, we got to where we were only working about 5 months out of the year because of the overregulation, and it just didn't make any sense anymore. But that's where our roots are, is in the logging.
Okay, so what was your take when all these hippies started coming around, or did that even impact you?
Well, it was part of our culture growing up. I mean, there was, but it was lifestyle people. It wasn't. I mean, there were dope growers, and there were, you'd hear, so and so, grows dope, and that's why they have all their money and that type of thing, and it was looked down upon. But nowadays it's completely different. Now you have punk kids with lifted 4-wheel drives that have no regard for anybody else, and it's not a good presence in the county. And there's it's brought in. I don't know the direct correlation, but we have a huge problem with heroin. And I think that there's a connection somewhere where somebody got their foot in the door with the weed and then started bringing the heroin in. It's just it's bad up here.
It's the outlaw nature, right? I mean, because they refer to them as outlaws all the time up on Murder Mountain. But it's if pot was legal, then there'd be no need. I mean, everybody would look at like meth or heroin or whatever and go, well, that's the illegal drugs. Yeah. Let's not deal with the illegal drugs. But since you already have pot as an illegal drug, it's like, all right, well, we're already outlaws. So if we're going to get busted, what's it matter? Right? Like at one point in the Murder Mountain story, they talk about this kind of shift that happens from these hippies who are growing their marijuana and just want to be left alone. Just let us, be self-sufficient, to, all right, we've got this big grow going on now, and we need to have guys on 4-wheelers patrolling 24/7 to protect our crop. But that requires that they use meth, and that it's like, so this kind of perpetuated itself into this kind of illegal, hostile drug cartel concept.
So back in high school, we would drive south from Fortuna and to a place, to Garberville, which is right there in southern Humboldt.
Yeah, I saw that referenced in the show.
Yeah, a lot, right? So that was kind of the epicenter. Everybody knew that's where they were growing weed.
That's where the culture was down there.
And you could tell who were the growers back then, right? And it's a total hippie culture. I mean, all of Northern California is. I mean, up to Humboldt State, but specifically down in Garberville, we knew that they were growing there, and we'd go surf at Shelter Cove, and they even had a scene where the guy was in Shelter Cove.
Yeah.
And that whole area it's all weed, right? It's all growing. So
did you know like to stay away from there? I mean, it's obviously you're not going through there to get to anywhere else, but you knew about the mountain.
It's a hunters that sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
Well, I was just saying the violence wasn't so prevalent back then. You heard stories of the violence you heard stories about back then where if one grower ripped another grower off, or two guys, like say Mark and I were partners and we were growing together, and this happened all the time. One of them would rip the other one off. And then you would hear about violence in situations like that. But as far as being an unsafe place to be, there was rumors about booby traps and stuff like that out in the woods. But you never ever. There were just rumors, a lot of it, I think.
Yeah, you weren't walking through the forest by yourself, just wandering very often.
Well,
you were when you're hunting once in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It was the hunters that would stumble across it.
Sure.
Going surfing, you're not going to see it, but
no.
The hunters, that Garberville area, down the coast, everywhere. I mean, there's deer everywhere, right? So the hunters would stumble across it, and there are other rumors that they would say, okay, even back in the day, I heard that some Vietnam veterans would come back and say, okay, we'll give you $30,000 if we harvest. If not, if we get busted, you don't get anything. So they would hang. This is the legend. Yeah. They'd hang fish hooks from trees, right? Trip lines, bungee sticks, all that. You heard all that, right, Shannon?
Yeah. Never saw any of it, but heard those same things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is the rumor is as good as the security anyway, right? It's just
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the community develops in from '68 on, and I got two more clips that give us the build up, and we can talk about your experience as Utes.
When we started getting money through selling marijuana. We knew we needed to create a community. We didn't pay federal income taxes, so we immediately started funding institutions.
Each watershed, they all had their own schools, all paid for by a voluntary taxation system. The same system that funded the community park here in Garberville and the Redwoods Rural Health Clinic.
We have community service organizations, excellent volunteer fire departments, environmental groups. The money that was gained from marijuana growing has served to create a community that could not have been created otherwise.
The institutions, the essential organizing processes that created this community were a form of self-taxation.
Marijuana, it's been the backbone and the footing of Humboldt County.
So now, Shannon, I would imagine you would argue that maybe logging was, I don't know.
It could have been. Back right now, there's no money in the schools down in that area, and they had a tax base in the 80s. Logging was really rolling in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, and early 90s, and there was money in the community as far as tax base goes, and that's all gone. I've got Eddie Houseworth is a friend of ours, and he worked for the school in Miranda, and it was kind of a joke. There's no funding for anything. I don't know if you ever played football down there, Mark, but it was like playing in a cow field.
Yeah,
there was no money for anything down there.
My sophomore year we played, and it was like playing in a cow field.
And that's because they didn't claim their income, so the community didn't benefit from the taxation and the revenue that's how our government works. Now here they're pointing out the idea that, hey, we had everything. We didn't need any intervention. Yeah. We had it all going on. We had a little community center. I don't know if those places that they mentioned are familiar to you, but they're, the hippie community or the grower community.
They had the Mateel still there, and that was in the show too, the Mateel Center, and I'm sure that some of them did give money to the school system, but it's suffering down there right now.
Yeah, voluntary taxation doesn't typically work. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Even mandatory taxation people are dodging. So let me
let me tell you something real quick.
Yeah.
Just because I'll lose it. It's me. But Miranda's in Southern Humboldt, right? So my mom worked as a kindergarten teacher at Hydesville School, which was right just up the hill from where Shannon lives, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of the start of the road to Ruth Lake.
Oh, okay.
And people would grow there, and they wouldn't come to the parent-teacher conferences. She would have to go to their homes, their trailers, whatever they had, and they would sit there. My mom would have their parent-teacher conference, and they would be clipping buds as my mom's trying to encourage them not to smoke around their kids because their kids are coming, their kindergartners are coming to school with a contact high, and they can't learn.
Yeah.
That's a real problem.
Isn't that scary? Right? Because you're just getting your kids high on purpose or accidentally. I mean, and if you don't think it's a problem, why would you change it? Right? So all of a sudden
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you've got these little kids that are mini stoners on accident, and they don't see any problem with the illegal. I mean, I kept looking for people when they're clipping the buds and all the rest of it to wear gloves. No.
Yeah, right. Well, I always thought it was cool that they trusted my mom enough to invite them into their home when they're doing this illegal activity, and they knew she wouldn't narc on them.
Right. Well, and to them, it's like they're like you said. There's no attempt to hide it because it's like who's gonna enforce it?
Back then it was different. Back then you go to jail.
Yeah, it was really big. It was a really big deal there.
Right, but you wouldn't go to jail, but if you got caught, you could.
No, people went to jail for years, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was back. We're talking like the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah.
When we were in high school and college, it was. I mean, people would go away. I mean, well, we're going to talk about camp a little bit. That's when it really cracked down. That wasn't right.
So this was to me, and I don't know. I'll ask you guys if this was news to you, but this was really interesting. How the quality of the marijuana began to change, and it changed everything, especially in Humboldt, because the guy who was in the video actually did this little importing here. So let me cut to that clip. This is the change in the type of marijuana.
They went to North Waziristan, an area of Pakistan that was of the same latitude as we are here. The person who went there to get seeds, we lovingly refer to as the smuggler.
Flying into Pakistan, when we landed, there were Pakistani soldiers every 10 feet. There were a couple of real intense moments, but I was not busted. We were able to connect with a kilo of Asian indica seeds and get them back into the United States. Prices went from $300 a pound for the seeded weed that we had been growing to $800, soon to $1,200, soon to $1,600 within a couple of years. And that's when the money started flowing in. We didn't come here to grow weed. We came here to escape. And now we were engaged in widespread criminal activity.
So the money shows up, and then that changes the game to now it's all of a sudden it's a cash crop, and people are going to start. In my area, there's even to this day. I was telling Swanny, I work with a police officer, and he talked about murder season, and I'm like, murder season? What's murder season? He says murder season is harvest time. And even though we're not in Humboldt, we're close enough, and people grow, so that when people are ready to harvest their crop, that's thousands upon hundreds of thousands of dollars, and murder happens. So that's that. But I found it interesting that the indica seeds came from Pakistan, and it totally changed the type of marijuana that grew. Now we would call that Humboldt weed, right? That's the emerald triangle. Was the emerald triangle a thing? Was that you guys?
Was it?
Yeah, totally.
You thought so?
Yeah.
I don't remember that phrase being, or that being called that until like in the 90s. But I don't know. I remember it. New to me. Yeah.
There's two triangles, right? There's that, the emerald triangle, and then there's the triangle that you connect. This is where I divert, Shannon. You can draw a perfect triangle to Hawaii, Humboldt County in Australia, or the Farallon Islands. Okay. Yeah, it's Farallon Islands. There's Australia. Anyways, and it's where all the great white sharks. That's why there's so many great white sharks up there on the north coast. There's a perfect triangle. Was it Australia or is it the Farallons? Probably both. Let's say the Farallons. It's closer.
Yeah, Australia.
Anyways, that's triangle. The other triangle. That was the triangle of death.
We just had a shark attack this year in Humboldt Bay, or a sighting. I don't know if it was an attack, but it was a sighting.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
that was cool.
They saw me eat a seal or something. Yeah,
it's a big fish.
That clip you just played. What sparks into my mind is, I was never a big pot smoker. I was around it quite a bit at one point, but I never did smoke a lot. But he talks about our seeded weed, and I can remember guys rolling joints and separating the seeds from the weed when they were rolling joints, and that's this product that they came within changed that.
Yeah, it changed everything. That was yeah. I remember if you didn't get them, they would pop like popcorn. It's like, man, you don't want that. As you're trying to catch your couch or your car seat on fire, you're like, who didn't pull out the seeds? Yeah, but it changed. It was like that was what we would call like the Mexican weed, and then there was the Humboldt. And I grew up in Southern California, and the Mexican weed was way bigger. But when I came to Chico State, I'm like, holy crap! You could take a bud and just hold it between your fingers and push it on the wall, and it would stick to the wall. It's like, wow, This is a totally different animal. And apparently it came from, Pakistan, they just somehow some guy, got a kilo of seeds woven into, pot holders and, handbags, and that changed the game. And then they learned. Now the farmers are pretty serious. I mean, the hippie guys are pretty really into the fact that we're growing these different strains, and they take a lot of care in the cultivation of their crop. And so they're always tweaking the genetic makeup of it. And so once they got these seeds, everything just kind of stemmed, so to speak, from there. So let me go to where it changed. and that's the camp. This is Nixon signs basically the anti-drug legislation, and it turns into camp, which is, what is it, Swanny? Campaign
against marijuana plantation.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think it was more
planting.
I mean, Nixon does do something, but the camp
it was later.
Was Reagan, and they say no to drugs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. But they built on it. I don't know. They showed Nixon in the clip, and
I know he's the one that came out. He was the first guy when,
they didn't start flying helicopters till the 80s.
Yeah, that was like 85, 84, 83, 84.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what you guys noticed when that changed, because that was right in your heyday.
One of the reasons that the marijuana industry took root in southern Humboldt was our unwillingness to give up. On my road, we could see the convoys coming in, and if the lookout saw the cloud of dust coming that indicated they were coming down our road, another volunteer would drive up to where the backhoe was parked and move the backhoe, blocking the road, and take an important part out of the backhoe's engine. The local authorities made very little impact on the marijuana crop in the first couple of years of commercial activity. It wasn't long before they got other resources.
It's the federally funded, state-run campaign against marijuana planting, known as CAMP, and it's striking daily in the hills of Humboldt County.
CAMP was a state program with federal backing. It employed military-style helicopters. The personnel from CAMP was largely drawn from narcotics divisions of urban police forces.
The era of sheriff and deputies driving vehicles up a rutted road, it was over.
So that's when the war came to your guys' attention, right? I mean, all of a sudden, they got helicopters flying over, and I'm sure you're getting news stories about grows and busts and things like that. And did the tone in the town change?
It was clear. It was on the news. You would see him. We would be out, and we'd be at football practice and see helicopters flying over with the big cargo nets full of weed. And the craziest thing to me, and now I see how they changed it, but they used to go and just burn it, right? And I always thought, these people must be getting so high burning this stuff, right?
Let me stand in the downwind.
The wood chipper. But I just remember they would go and burn all this stuff. And you always heard about, so-and-so lost their crop, and it was everywhere. Camp was everywhere. And there was a hatred against camp, and it was scaring people, and it was the military on attack. And there was a lot of pushback, I remember, from camp. You recall that, Shannon?
Yeah. I remember logging back then. You would, there were times we'd come into grows when we were logging. We just leave them alone. We just stay away from them. Didn't want to mess with our equipment. But at the same time, we were at that time we were logging in Sprout Creek, which is down in the Garberville area. And on the way home, you would see the helicopters, and they'd have a cargo net with a load of weed the size of a Volkswagen. Wow. Then they'd be landed on the river bar, or wherever. But and then there was conspiracies. There's they're taking it all for themselves. They're taking it and selling it themselves.
Well, that later happened, right? In the Iran Contra, where we sold cocaine to get prisoners out or something about Ollie North. I don't know.
That was guns.
That was before the internet, and you could actually vet these little rumors.
You want to talk about Iran Contra?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. Please. No, I just want to stick to the story that comes from Humboldt County about Murder Mountain. And so that was when the war on drugs really started, right? And I would imagine that whatever side of the marijuana grow world you're on, there's still, everybody's like at high school, you're making peace. You don't care about the hippies selling their pot, and they don't care about, you're not trying to bust them, if you're not part of the community. It's everybody against the government is probably what it felt like.
So up Fortuna, Eureka, Arcata, Arcata that's different. Let's say Fortuna and Eureka. I didn't run with people who were growing weed or anything. It was the Southern Humboldt people, and they're the ones it affected their economy and their lifestyle because that's all they did. Right. And that's how they made their money. And I can't generalize, but many people did.
Right. What about kids growing weed when you were in high school? Was there any of your buddies you knew that were growing weed?
I always heard that so-and-so was growing weed up in the redwood trees, right? So they would build platforms in the redwood trees to keep, so because the helicopters would come over, right?
Yeah.
And they would look at open fields, and that's how they targeted everything. And they started growing them in the redwood trees, and they could move them around and do, get sun, and it became a game of evasion.
Yeah.
You'd see somebody with a new car, like a new Camaro. We're all driving beaters, right?
Right.
I wonder where that came from, right?
Yeah, that was like in November, right after the October harvest. They're like, man, wonder how you got that.
Yeah, exactly. He's in construction.
So, Shannon, what was it that when you first started watching the Murder Mountain documentary, what is it, six episodes on Netflix, when you first started watching it, you didn't like it. What was it? What struck you poorly about it?
Well, my kids turned it on, and I was watching it with them, and right off the bat, you had these people, saying that, well, this is Humboldt, and so we're broadcasting to the whole world. Well, this is Humboldt. Well, it's not the Humboldt I know. It's not it's not even close to the Humboldt I grew up in, and it just really turned me off. And then I've seen ruined lives. I've seen people. I've been in that part of the county, and it's it's a shithole down there. I mean, it's there's garbage everywhere. There's good people there too. I don't mean to say that. That's like even in the show, those people. You got to see the humanity also. They're people,
they're family,
and there are good people there, but it's as a whole, it's just not something that I'm proud of in our county.
So, and you're still there, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I live in Fortuna.
Okay. So is that fishing? Is that why it's tuna?
No. Spanish for fortune.
Oh, okay. All right. So everything changed. So Shannon, you'll be the one, because Swanny, you got out. You left, and you
got out.
Yeah,
you escaped.
Yeah, escaped. Got over the fence. You came to Chico, and what was that? 89, 87. Okay.
87.
So I think it was 96, the medical marijuana industry changed everything for you guys up there. And here's a clip where they talk about the big change and really what went from a small outlaw community to a huge outlaw community because of this.
Lighting up. That's the way proponents celebrated the victory of the medical marijuana initiative in California. And they did, from Santa Monica to San Francisco. Anyone suffering from AIDS and cancer to chronic pain and migraine headaches would be free to smoke pot under the new laws. No written prescriptions required.
That suddenly changed the whole game. Under 215, 6 plants could be put out. So we put out 6 plants, and then it got to be 10 plants, then bumping it up to 25 and 50. They're not busting. They're confused. They're trying to figure out the policies and the game plans, and it's proving to be way too complicated. The logical conclusion was, let's just do 1,000 plants.
The word got out. People came from all over the country to grow here because there was so much gray in the law.
Prices for Humboldt weed at that point were near their peak. The highest price topped at around, I think, $5,200 a pound. And more people come into the area, buy land for the purposes of growing marijuana. That was the green rush.
It's not like the old hippie days anymore in Northern California's Emerald Triangle. Our medical marijuana law is so vague, it's opened the floodgates for profiteers. Mega marijuana grows mean mega money.
So, Shannon, did you notice a difference when the medical marijuana laws changed?
Yeah, well, the medical marijuana, it was what I saw, it was a foot in the door. It was something that wasn't, the people that were using it didn't have a medical need for it. They made up a medical need for it.
Sure.
And my personal view though is, I mean, I think that it's legit in a medical sense if you actually have a need and use it that way. But it was, it was exploited. It wasn't. People would get the 215 card, and it allowed them to have a certain amount on them, not just the growing part. They would grow it illegally. They would grow more than they were supposed to grow, but they would, they could be caught with a certain amount, and everything would be okay. But it was, it was exploited. It was just something that wasn't used like. I guess it was meant to be exploited, though. I think it was, the proponents of it knew that it was going to do what it did.
Yeah, and it actually invited, as they said in the clip, invited people who were profiteers, to come into this area where it's remote, right? You hear in the other clip, like I just parked one backhoe across the road, and nobody could reach us, for hours if you wanted to drive in. So the seclusion and the pre-existing nature of the grows in Humboldt County made it easy for people to come in, commandeer a certain, or buy or whatever, or rent or whatever, a certain stretch of land, and just throw up these mega grows that was mega millions. And it created, where there's money, there's, outlaws, and there's going to be, illegal activity, which includes murder and, everything else. So did you see the change, Shannon, when that, did it become more criminal?
215 brought it to town. 215 people were growing in their backyards. They would rent a house, and then they would gut the house and grow in the house. That's still going on today. But they were under the cover of this 215 card. If the house got caught, there was a penalty. I don't know what the penalties would have been, but because it wasn't within the constraints of the law, but and it expanded. It went. I don't know what it started out as, just a handful of plants, and then pretty soon, you could grow 100 plants, or you could then pretty soon it was a certain amount of square footage. It never did. There was no. It's like what Billy Hansel said. Billy on there said that it was so gray. It was all gray areas in the law.
Right, which made it unenforceable.
Yeah. He's referring to the sheriff. So when we drive up to Ruth Lake, you pass the airport, and on the left-hand side, there's these houses that for years you've never seen a person in them or their windows open, and everybody knows they're just growing weed in there. Right? You know what I'm referring to, Shannon?
Yeah, and there's houses too where they would make false boxes around the windows, so it looked like somebody actually lived there, but it would be nothing inside; it'd be a shell.
I just remembered this story. So my mom's teacher's aide was busted for one of the largest indoor pot cultivations in history. So they used generators, right? Because one of the big tip-offs would be using PG&E, right?
Yeah.
So this is they had generators that they put underground to help kill the noise, and they had dug underneath the house and had grow rooms and all this crazy stuff. Like, really, she was a great teacher's aide.
a little forgetful, but aside from that, she arrived to work. It wouldn't always be on time, but she was always there. Yeah,
she was very happy.
She's very happy. Yeah. So there was the whole this law helped. Granted, people are always growing marijuana, but this made it that people could do so, and because there was decriminalization even before medical marijuana, but granted, on the level that you guys are talking about people growing, you're not decriminalizing that. You have intent to distribute and, all that type of stuff. But then you've got, what do they do with their money? And they talked about even guys just burying money up there because, it's even like now that it's illegal, they still haven't worked out, well, if you bring truckloads of cash to the bank, is the federal government going to, confiscate that on some level? So they just end up hiding all their money. So you get all of this change in your community that brings this lawlessness and this outlaw nature to you guys, and that that doesn't bode well if you're trying to raise a family and run a legit business, because you've got these guys who are above the law and what you said, walking around with AR-15s and stuff.
Okay, so the two different things. One, when we were talking earlier, there's a town called Xenia, which is a back road from Ruth Lake back to Napa where we were. It would come out in Garberville, I believe, right, Shannon? Somewhere around there, or Alder Point?
Yeah, and Alder Point, all comes together. You could go from the upper side of Ruth Lake is where the road takes off, and then you could come out, go through Old Harris and down into Garberville. So that would go through, Xenia and Alder Point and all that area back in there.
So it's a slow country road that's called through the redwoods. And I remember going with my kids when they were young, and we come into Xenia, and there's guys just walking down the road with AR-15s, patrolling, doing whatever you do. It's an odd feeling, especially in California.
Yeah, in America.
Well, I mean, in Arkansas, you wouldn't be as surprised. In the middle of California, you're a bit more surprised or taken back.
Right. And now that I think about it, how does the law enforcement get funded, but through taxes, right? And so now all of a sudden you've got this area that's rich with outlaws, rich with cash, but not rich with taxation. And so how are you going to have law enforcement who even can hold a candle to enforcement of whatever this marijuana law is, right? I mean, so you're outnumbered as a police agency. You're like, we can't. What are we going to drive up there and bust, one garden, and we're going to be in a complete firefight for, a day and a half just to get that one garden? No, thanks. I think we'll stay out of that, and we'll keep people safe in their houses. Imagine they had to allocate resources, in order to protect the community rather than drive out there and extend themselves to bust people that they don't even know they're going to get conviction on because the laws and regulations are so weird after 215.
I've never heard of any firefights.
Yeah.
Like really, I've never, I think that's, there's lots of guns and that, but I've never really heard of like a big shootout, like an OK Corral shootout. I've heard of shootings. I know of officers that have had guns pointed at them and they've shot the criminals that were with the guns, but never like a firefight type shootout.
Yeah, I imagine that was really, like what Swanny talks about, guys walking around with guns. That was really to protect them from the other people. Because if the police roll up, they're going, you know what? I'll just take my citation, or whatever it is. I'm not gonna.
It's an attitude and a defense with the show of power kind of thing. I think.
Yeah.
Outlaw attitude.
Yeah, it's outlaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's cut right to the Outlaws and Alder Point.
We're seeing more people robbing each other, neighbors robbing each other, workers robbing their employers, because people aren't making as much money and they want a grandiose piece of the pie.
Well, Alder Point's always been known to be a outlaw town. No other better way to put it. And people living up here, they pretty much stick together on things. You mind your own damn business, they say.
You got to have a certain mentality up here to kind of survive, and it is, I'd say, kind of corresponds to that of a soldier.
Is that the way you guys experience? Like, I would imagine that you would try not to go through there because it's like, I don't want to run into anybody's area, but, I guess sometimes you could go hunting and maybe end up in that region or end up in a place that you didn't think you would.
I'm sorry to cut you off. My uncle had a piece of property in Bloxburg, which is in the same area. And the crime they're talking about, it's not the pot smokers, it's the tweakers. It's the people on meth. And the cabin or the house on this property, he had 500 acres and it was a great place. We hunted out there. It was a fun place to go to. And we cut firewood. We did all kinds of stuff. But anyway, the house always had the key in the lock when we weren't there. So when they came, they could just walk in, because you knew they were going to be there. You knew they were going to rip you off. And so you just didn't have anything of any value that you left there and left the key in the door.
Wow. So you just expect that whatever you had there was going to be gone through. I mean, that's kind of like, I got the sense that the way this community works, if someone got busted for something, and who was a grower, and they got arrested and put in jail, they knew that when they come back to their property, it was going to be gone through and just trashed, because everybody knew they had something that was of value, and they knew that, I got locked up. Now I'm going to lose everything I got, and I got to start over.
The guy in the show that where his place had been trashed when he was gone, I would bet that it didn't look that much different when he left.
Yeah, not known for their cleanliness, are they?
No.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody who goes up there. I've never known anybody who's gone up there. Again, maybe some hunters. I know one guy that came across a farm.
I got friends that grew up out there.
Yeah, I'm sure you do because you're redneck. Yeah. But
well, Fortuna is Southern Humboldt too. Fortuna is like the extreme north end of Southern Humboldt.
Right.
And so there's not necessarily everybody is a grower up there.
No, I don't think so. Right. I've got a couple pretty good friends that there were loggers out of the area, and there were also loggers out of the area that were growers along with the logging. But there's I know some good dudes that came out of there, and they're a little bit wild. They're outlaws. They're more outlaws in the hunting and fishing than they are in the in the dope scene.
Okay, so now this community, this type of community, brought in like people who would. I forget what Swanny, you used to talk about. People would stand on the side of the road, and talk about trimming and the rest of it. And what they call them in the show?
Trimmigrants.
Yeah, so this is a podcast, so we couldn't see what Courtney was doing, but he put his fingers like scissors, like held them out, 2 fingers out in front of him, like he was holding, like they were scissors, and they would stand on the side of the road hitchhiking, or apparently hitchhiking, with their 2 fingers extended, and that implied that they would prune, or what do they call it? What's the proper terminology? They would just cut. They'd cut your buds.
They would trim
them. Clean
them.
Yeah. Okay, so did that bring people to your town that, like, they started off in the show, I don't know if they were from France or some Switzerland or whatever, these girls there. Yeah. So people would just come to town?
So now when we're saying town, let's not talk about like Eureka or Fortuna. Garberville, they'd bring them to Garberville. They'd bring them to Ruth Lake area. They'd bring them to the hills, any small towns up there. Yeah, and we've been in the little country store up there and heard Russian languages, or what appears to be language. It's just like, what the heck? Like, we're in the middle of most really like white area that is white, like Anglo area,
right?
And there's these guys that are speaking Russian. It's odd. It's spooky, really.
My wife and I ran the snack bar for the football stadium and in Fortuna. And anyway, we'd go to cash and carry and get our supplies. And there would be the people with the really heavy European accents or Russian accents loading up food supplies to take to the hills.
And it must, at that point, that was probably a little bit pre the internet and the rest of it. It's like the word just got out that if you go to this area, you can get some basically day labor job and make pretty decent money. That's what it must have been.
Oh, that's right now.
Yeah, we're talking 2 different things. Day labor would be the clippers, the cutters. But what Shannon's talking about is like now.
It is now, yeah. Like that's within a year or two. Right now, those people are loading up supplies to go out. Bulgarians. But Bulgarians and Russians, and then you have the Trimmigrants. I think they get paid by the pound. I'm sure they get paid by the pound.
Okay.
Well, it said it in the show too,
yeah,
I think
it did. That's the way they talked about it. You get a certain amount per pound. But so wait, so you're okay. I'm going to go to my last clip, because if you're talking about now, we're talking about legalization, and this is the dance that everyone's having to dance, right? Because it's been a year since marijuana's been legal in California, and they have to worry about compliance versus being an outlaw on the black market, and this is some of the dilemma. And I want to hear what is actually happening on the ground level.
Humboldt County supplies, as far as I understand it, about 80% of the U.S. black market.
I think counties and state and feds all need to understand better how to regulate this thing and make it worth all of our while. Multi-billion-dollar industry.
Kind of feel sorry for those that are coming into compliance. Marijuana is not as lucrative as it has been in the past. The price per pound is down. So the smart man, and I'm not saying I agree with him, smart man's going to do it illegally.
I actually have a property up on Murder Mountain. I have 10 acres up there. I'm very familiar with that property, and the rumors are true. Murder Mountain, it's fucked up.
So, compliance versus the black market, which, obviously on the black market, you're going to get a lot more, which I imagine is where we're getting the import of the people from different countries, Bulgaria or whatever, like you're talking about, because they're probably more into export than they are selling within California, I imagine.
Well, what I've heard, my stepdad was up there, and he said that he was talking to one of them, and they said, no, it's just easier to make money here. It's just easier I don't think they're sending it back to Russia. They're just growing to sell it. They can't make any money. There's no money in the Eastern Bloc countries. So They're just growing to sell it here.
It could be cotton for all they care.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it helps that it's drugs.
Right. Yeah, because that creates a better black market. I mean.
Yeah. And the big problem, too, is the way California went about it, and all this taxation, they just got so greedy and out of control with all these fees and taxes. And so let's just, take an example. So you could buy a pound of weed for $1,000 legally, right? And through a legal farmer, and they've paid all their taxes. Or you can go to the same dude that's been selling it to you, and now he's going to sell it to you for $450 because he's selling it on the black market and he's not paying all the taxes. So California, by doing this, they encouraged more illegal activity and more black market growers because they're so dang greedy. They saw all the money that Colorado was making, and they just went for this big, huge money grab. And now there's all of these illegal pot shops all over California that aren't regulated. Yeah, they get busted, but whatever.
They made their money.
There's so many of them. And California screwed it up so bad because they were so greedy, and they have created this situation with the black market that's making it worse, and it's drawing all of these nefarious people into the community.
Well, and what I've heard is that even if you go to a dispensary or wherever you go to buy your legal weed, they still only operate in cash. So claiming that is, I think they're tracking it better now, but I think it's not hard to see where some of the opportunity for illegal income is available.
The operation in cash, so a lot of that has to do with all your banks are federal. Banks won't take a deposit from you,
right?
Because it's a federal crime still, and the legalization from a law enforcement standpoint has given them some teeth. Now we have a black and white law. Now we have some, that there's the gray areas are gone. And so they can go after the illegal grows. They can, when they bust an illegal grow, they have black and white laws that they can prosecute them on.
Right. Which helps probably because if you believe how the documentary ended, which took us, I was surprised how up to the moment it took us to, because this thing was released, Murder Mountain was released in September 2018, and they were still talking about things that are happening in the summer of 2018 in the show. So it's still pretty up to date. So this is definitely a fluid market, a fluid situation, and a fluid community. But if you believe how they ended, it's more like, hey, you know what? All the illegal growers are either, most of them aren't trying to come into compliance.
No.
But they're not necessarily having to operate on Murder Mountain anymore, because the one guy who we ended right there, where he's like, I've got 10 acres on Murder Mountain and it's screwed up there, but I think I'm one of the few legal grows.
Yeah. Hansel at the end, he says, "We're coming after you. They got these black and white laws now. They're coming after you, and the illegal grow. They're coming after you."
Right. Which, from a community member standpoint, from a distance, I'm like, I'm all right with that. I think there's going to be enough marijuana on the market to satisfy whatever needs or wants that people have. So if you can do it legal, it's like I'm not in favor of, illegal alcohol production or whatever. It's like, or pill production. I'm not in favor of any of that. Put it under the regulation, make it reasonably taxed, and get some tax revenue, and let's keep everything above board so that people don't have to worry about walking through a forest or driving down a road and getting shot at.
Yeah. So the sad thing is to flip it back to the beginning of the show or the end of the show, whatever. But around the guy that was murdered.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that. So if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Murder Mountain, we haven't covered hardly nothing about the way the story goes. But you're talking about Garrett, the guy who was murdered, who was kind of the through line to all of these episodes. His parents trying to find out what happened to their son Garrett.
Right, and people knew what happened, and it's interesting how it all went down, and just the cowboy justice that took place. Vigilante, I guess.
Yeah.
But at the end, that happened in 2012 or something like that, and it's still basically and never gone to trial, or they didn't mention it.
Right.
And it's all because of the laws and the way that these guys found the body, and he confessed under duress. He'd been shot. And go ahead, Shannon.
No, I was just going to say a coerced confession, and then they for the drama of the show, they've got another guy that's still on the run, and he's not going to give him any info, and a witness. There is a witness out there.
Yeah, the David guy or whatever his name was, the Vietnam vet.
No. There's a witness. There's a witness. The guy that helped bury the body.
Oh, the guy that buried the body, right?
The guy that helped with the shooter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, but you were saying, Shannon, that this is just one of tons of people who have gone missing up there in that
you bet,
godforsaken place where you can't get any help. There's no cell service. There's no police. There's no trash. There's no power. There's no. This is super isolated. So anything that goes down, I mean, if someone wants to take your life, you're not calling anyone.
No, it's kind of a lawless community out there.
And it makes me realize, just watching it, it's like, oh, we need to live in groups of people, we need a government, that will step in when necessary, to protect safety, protect, the community, to make sure that our kids are being raised, in a healthy environment and educated and pushed in the right direction to keep our capitalistic society moving in the right direction.
You know what it reminds me of, and this is, not to marginalize this guy. It's a horrible thing that he died. It's horrible that he ran up here and was chasing us. But it reminds me of Pinocchio and the kids that turned into donkeys, smoking the cigars and following the carnival and all that. I mean, he was off having this big adventure in the wrong direction. Having this big adventure, there's better ways to live. There's better ways to make your dreams come to fruition, than a life of crime.
Well, and I'm sure you guys growing up in that area, teenagers and young adults, especially males, are not the best at assessing risk versus reward. And I imagine you guys had friends who got into that industry just because there's a quick buck and it seems easy and everybody's nice and everything works. And as long as everything's going well, I'm going to make some decent cash just for driving it from point A to point B or taking it in to my friends after school or whatever. I imagine you guys had guys who were lost in that world.
Shannon may have. I didn't really, but what I was going to touch on was that you say male, but it's not. There's a lot of females that are involved, right? You got these dreadlock or Rastafarian girls that are so up in it, and they don't see the violence. They come to Humboldt to be a part of this hippie culture and the love and the weed and just be a part of it. And they are so naive and they get sucked in, and they, those disappearance of these people half the people that disappear are women, right? Young women who come up there for this lifestyle.
Yeah.
and they're gone, right? And it's so they're so naive and so okay, I'd love to come and trim for you or hang out and let's get high and do whatever, and they disappear and they're never seen again. I mean the guys too, but at least guys have a little bit better instinct, or not instinct, but the ability to fight off.
Well, and they're less appealing, right? I mean, you're not going to rape. Right. You're not going to rape most people aren't going to rape a dude. But if you capture a gal from France, you're gonna, she ain't maybe never getting out, right? I mean, and no one's going to look for her because she's from Italy or whatever. I mean, there was a mom in this show from Australia looking for her daughter, still searching. And if it wasn't for the local nature and kind of some nice women up on Murder Mountain. They would never, the family of Garrett would never have even started to have any kind of answer at all. So you can only imagine all of those missing posters in the local Garberville, store, that all of those people, none of those people are going to get found, and none of their family is going to be able to come looking for them.
Yeah. Shannon, did you ever go to Reggae on the River?
I never know.
Oh.
No, I
went to Reggae.
Did you? No.
Times. It's crazy, Quad. It's down on the Eel River, south.
I think I've heard things that has changed. It's worse even now. But go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll give you you can give me the current version. But I'll just give you the 30,000 foot version of mine. It was weed. I mean, hippie people, then some like Eureka Fortuna folks blended in there, but just everything was weed, mud, and nudity. So it's on the river, so everybody's swimming naked and then rolling around in mud and walking around caked in mud naked, smoking weed, listening to reggae. It's a crazy. It's like a mini Woodstock on the Eel River in southern Humboldt. So what's it like now? They doing?
I've never been, but I've just heard people complain that now there's a lot more hard drugs. It's not just the smoking weed or the mushrooms or whatever they were taking back then. That there's a lot more of the hard drugs now. I wanted to say something though too. I've got a son that's 21. This gets home a little bit. He joined the Air Force about 3.5 years ago. He's in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. If he hadn't left, him and I've had this discussion. If he hadn't left, there's a big possibility that he'd be involved, maybe not Murder Mountain, but he'd be involved in this industry. And I'm just so glad he left.
It's too tempting, right? I mean, you don't not a lot of training or skill, and you could be earning a fair amount of money really quick.
And if you're a young kid and you don't have, I know I struggled with direction when I was in my early 20s. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I just took the path of least resistance. I had opportunity in the timber industry. My family had been doing that for a long time, and that's where the path that I took.
So there's no doubt that the marijuana industry has had a big impact on Humboldt County, but we also know that there's legitimate industries going on, and this is kind of like a little, I don't know, I want to say like a pimple on the community. But when you say Humboldt, the next word is weed. It's like Humboldt weed. So it all goes together, but it's not all surrounded in that. And I think that's what, Shannon, that's why you didn't like this Murder Mountain when you first started watching it. Do you have a different opinion now?
I as far as a film goes, the more I watched it, the more interesting it was, and I enjoyed watching it. But and what you just said though about how Humboldt and weed, I work out of the area now, and it's the first thing that comes up. Oh, you're from Humboldt. Weed. I was working on a container ship in Oakland with these two guys on a night shift, two great big dudes, and they said Eureka because my local's out of Eureka, and I said, yeah, Humboldt County, yeah, Humboldt County. How much weed can you bring us?
Yeah,
yeah, and I said, well, so I played in. I said, so how much do you want? And the guy thinks about it, and he says, 60 pounds. He says, I can get rid of 60 pounds a week.
Oh,
I said, man, I got that in the car.
Yeah, but that's what people think, right? It's just like you go to Garberville store, and they're like, how many pounds you want? Just like that. You just think that that's what it is, and that everybody there And by the way, if you were like, say, in your son's position, you'd be like, start doing the math. Like, if I could sell it for this and make it for this, all I got to do is this one thing. And I know a guy who probably knows a guy, and he could fill my car with the 60 pounds, and I could just drive down there one time, and all of a sudden, I've got enough for a new car.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean,
I know people that right now leave Eureka, drive across the country.
Yeah.
With a truck or with a car, this just innocuous car full of weed, and they just go and drop it off, fly home, rent a car, drive it, drop it off, just go speed limit the whole way.
Yeah.
Buy a ticket, one-way ticket home, and just boom.
Right. It's too easy, right? It requires no skill. It just requires, an ability or a desire to make a few dollars and a willingness to risk your own safety and future.
Yeah. I had a friend come through Little Rock and say, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Want to go have dinner?" "Yeah, we go out to dinner." I'm like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm doing this.
I'm driving this across town or across the country."
Across the country.
Yeah. To make a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
The ones you hear about are the ones that aren't smart enough not to speed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Don't get pulled over, right? That's
one job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when I was like 17 years old, I didn't register my Volkswagen Rabbit for about a year. And I became the safest driver ever because I didn't want to draw any attention. So I was like using my signal all the time, going the speed limit because I don't want to pay my registration. I didn't have enough money to pay my registration at the time. So, I understand that idea. Don't draw attention. But, people are in an excited state to earn their money. So, or maybe they just naturally speed and they don't think enough to do it different.
Well, my friend was pretty smart, but there might not be the brightest crew that get hired to do that. And they might not really noodle it through.
Attention to detail may not be number one.
But back to Shannon's thing with his son. I mean, I think it'd be so hard because, so I worked at the Eureka Inn, made pretty good money, right? As a bellman, $35 an hour or whatever. But I made like $100 a day in tips.
Right.
And in the mid 80s, that's a ton of cash, right?
Yeah.
For a kid with
there's not a lot of those jobs.
You don't have any expenses.
Right. Yeah, living at home.
Yeah.
So you can live with mom and dad and work at McDonald's or,
right,
a couple runs or do whatever.
Yeah, drive to LA and you're, a couple times and you're good.
Hey, $5,000, $10,000, whatever. That'd be very tempting.
Right, and even on the moral standpoint, because we all talk about it. We all say just weed, right? If you put cocaine in that slot, you're like, oh, I don't want to be a cocaine runner, But I'm just driving some weed to some people, It's like because it is a different drug. It's a different like the one guy in the Murder Mountain documentary. He's like, so I got busted. I did a year, and I was 5 years on probation. And the day I was off probation, I went back to smoking pot. I mean, if it was cocaine, he'd have been wrecked already. He'd have gotten busted, violated 10 times because it's like it's weed, man. I can live without it.
If I just started running, dope to San Francisco with this job I have now, it's not the product you're taking. It's where the danger is. It's the money. You end up, you'd end up face down in the bay eventually.
Right. Yeah. It's not strange to hear of a drug deal gone wrong and there end up being bodies, right? I mean, I watched Breaking Bad. I know how it works.
Did you watch that video of Shannon getting that sweet side by side?
Yeah, let's talk about that guy before we end. What Guy Fieri is from y'all's neighborhood, and so you guys. Did you both go to school with them? What's the connection? Because Swanny touts the fact that he's got him on speed dial, and then I see you in a video getting a quad runner from a custom quad runner. What was that?
It was it's a Razor, a 4-seat Razor XP1000. He did that for 11 of us.
I was number 12.
You were number 12. Actually, there's been some more since the original 11, but
one.
That was in 2014, and I'm not sure all the details of it, but he gave us customized side by sides, and we took ownership of them in Oregon at Winchester Bay at a big festival up there called the Dune Fest. And it was a big deal. It was a lot of fun. And I don't know. He's really a gracious dude. He's really, giving. And it's just, I'm really fortunate to be part of that group.
And so I hesitate to ask, do you still have your razor?
Yeah, it's in the garage.
Ah.
Can you tell the Kid Rock story?
Oh, yeah, we went in August, and I wasn't part of this originally, but in August, there was a group of guys who were going to the Kid Rock concert in Ventura, I think it was, and one of them dropped out, and so there was a group text that said, who wants to go? And so I jumped on it. Yeah, I want to go. And so there were 6 of us, I think, that including Guy that flew down in his private jet to Ventura.
And my other buddy, Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny was in there, Johnny Wise, and we. It was awesome. Flew into the airport there, got in a black SUV, headed for the concert, blew through all the gates right to the back of the stage. It was unreal. We had security escorts everywhere behind the stage and back into the crowd. And it wasn't like a meet and greet. We actually, it was like hanging out on a back patio with Kid Rock and the guys that were with him. And it was neat. It was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun.
Shannon, who else did you meet?
I met Cindy Crawford.
What? Cindy Crawford was at a Kid Rock concert?
Yeah,
hanging out with Kid Rock. And
her and her husband were there, and she was super cool. She was just really down to earth, and she looked great, and that was pretty cool. Seeing someone from our era like that, that we'd seen since we were kids on TV. That was pretty neat.
More excited than meeting Kid Rock.
You know what? Listen to this. The whole, the side thing is awesome. The Kid Rock concert, that was a once in a lifetime event. That was really cool. One of the coolest times I've had hanging out with Guy. I don't know what we were down for. I think Cindy and I might have been going to a Raiders game or something. We stayed at his house.
Cindy's his wife, not Cindy.
My wife. Yeah.
I thought they. We were fast friends. Me and Cindy, we met. Now we're going to the Raiders game.
But anyway, so we were down there. We stayed with him, and I went with Guy to his kid's soccer game. Normal, everyday dad stuff, So we're sitting on the sidelines watching the soccer game. It was a tournament. He was going to play a couple games that day, and but those times are really the cool times. There's really not a lot of dialogue, not a lot of anything. You're just sitting together watching the kids play sports. And a funny thing though is after that first game, he was talking to his son's coach, and I start looking at this guy and I recognize him. It was Tony Adan.
No way.
Yeah, it was Tony Adan. Yeah. Tony Adan, someone that Swanny and I played football with at CR.
Yeah. And in high school, he was my guard.
Yeah, he's the one I come by when I crushed him. No, he probably wasn't. But anyway, that. So I said, Tony, and he didn't recognize me right away either. But then from there, Tony's kid went with us. We went and had lunch, and then came back in another game. But just the normal everyday dad stuff is really cool. I mean, the other stuff's really cool, and there's neat stories about it and all that. But the everyday dad stuff is, those are the best times.
Well, and that's probably, I'm sure he has connections, but I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons that Guy comes back is because it's like, I can just be Guy. You don't have to be, Guy Fieri, with the hair and the food and all that, it doesn't have to be all that. He's just like, I just want to be a regular guy. So when you're with him, does he get mobbed or ask for pictures, or does that happen all the time?
Yeah, it's craziness. But at the soccer field, it wasn't. Right. The soccer field, there were a few people that they said hi and things like that, but it was nothing. But I've been with him in places where it's crazy, and it's really nuts to me because I see him like I see the rest of my friends, and then to have him be mobbed like this is nuts. I mean, there's we spend a lot of time stepping in front of him, between him and people, and actually pushing people off of him at times. It's really it's crazy.
Yeah, our culture of celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, it was my buddy. Courtney's in Chico right now. I don't know if you know that, Shannon.
Yeah.
And we're buddies been buddies since college, since the dorms in Chico. But my buddy who runs the BMU, the student union in Chico, called me and said, "Man, hey, guy's here, and he's cooking with his boys, for the people who were in the campfire."
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool, and I think he was on, newspaper article or anything. But anyways, he gives a lot back. I mean, it's really impressive. Like anytime the Reading fires, boom, he's there giving back. Chico, he's there.
Santa Rosa fires, all that. Yeah.
It's very, very cool. He's very generous.
Yeah, it would be easy. I guess it would probably be easy to get into your own self-serving, narcissistic realm when you have all this adulation and all this money and, all this. But yeah, a matter of fact, I think I tweeted out a picture from the police officers when he fed, all the people who were the first responders. I was like, man, guys in town. Actually, I probably tweeted at Swanny too, because I was like, hey, Swanny, your friend's in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then and my buddy, did you know Jim Cloney, Shannon? He played basketball at Eureka High.
The name's familiar. Yeah.
NCR.
Yeah.
Anyways, his son's in that picture. He's a firefighter.
Oh, good.
I thought it was ironic. Yeah.
I've never met anybody that pours so much into other people. I mean, he is so, I don't know. He's just all about, if somebody's got a dream, something that they're wanting to do and he can help somehow, he's on it. He's in on it, and putting people together. He's got friends that do different businesses and he's always putting people together. And it's really refreshing to see, how he treats people.
Yeah, he uses his influence to actually help people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's great, which is why Swanny booked him for the show.
I got Shannon instead.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. The hair's a little different, but
Yeah.
Shannon.
Charlie Tio's next week too.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, Shannon, I'll give you the last word on Murder Mountain. Would you suggest that people watch it? And if you do, what filter do you want them to watch with it? How do you want them to look at it?
I would suggest people watch it. I think that it was a well-made film. I think that that it tells a pretty good story. I think that for me, I don't think it treats law enforcement correctly in the film, and I would I will stand next to Billy Hansel any day of the week.
Sheriff Hansel.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just the filter would be that it isn't. It's a group of people. It's a community. It's not Humboldt itself. It doesn't represent the whole entirety of Humboldt.
Yeah, it's almost like I would think of it like, Butte County, and then there's Chico as we get smaller, and then there's, Chapmantown. And what goes on in Chapmantown does not reflect Chico, much less Butte County. So what goes on Murder Mountain doesn't reflect Humboldt or even, the cities around there.
Well, Paradise was a little bit more like Southern Humboldt before it burned down.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. You were talking about how you could always identify the Garberville people or the Alder Point people in the grocery store or the Walmart or whatever. Oh, I can pick out the Paradise people when I go to Walmart. I'm like, okay, you're countrified.
Yeah, it's different. So Shannon, do you think that it will be at the movie or the what is it? It's not a movie. What is it, Courtney? What would you call Murder Mountain?
Documentary series.
Sure.
You think it will be a big video? I mean, an advertisement for Southern Humboldt or Humboldt County? Will it bring more people there?
I don't think so.
From an outsider, I'd be like, it just looks like junky.
I think people are leaving now. I think there's an exodus right now.
Yeah, because even they were saying that it's not about the
climate,
the climate and ability to grow there. It was about the ability to grow without any interference.
Ability to hide it.
Yeah. No, well, you didn't even almost need to hide it, right? It's hiding in plain sight because no one was looking for it. They weren't running helicopters all the time.
Oh, this one part I did think was cool was they'll take the helicopters up and they'll find a site and then go on the map and say, "They legal or illegal?" Remember that part?
Well, they find it on Google Earth now.
But even live, I mean, just going up with the helicopter and saying there's coming, because there's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
And then they screwed up. They busted the wrong farm.
Yeah. But they didn't do it. To me, the police handled that so well. They roll up. They're not just cutting everything down and lighting it on fire. They're confirming, reconfirming, checking their location, and they're like, okay, well, you're legal. Have a good day, sir. I mean, they didn't
said, let me take a picture of that form from the state. I've never seen one.
Yeah. Right. I've never seen a legal grow permit, or at least whatever form he was looking at. So to me, I was looking, I mean, that was I hope that was a good representation of the police, because it seemed like, hey, we're not just vigilantes going in and it's us versus you and we're taking you down no matter what. We're going to do it within the constraints of the law that have created our positions, and we're going to enforce them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Shannon and I know, he knows more than me, but we know Highway Patrol up there, deputies, I mean, Eureka Police, we know Arcata Police. I mean, we know law enforcement up there, and they're us, right? And they're not be vigilantes and dirtbags. They're there to protect and serve, and it's legit, right? And if you're doing something that's legal, they're gonna walk away, but they're do their job,
right? Yeah. Right, which is what we want, right? I mean, that's why I don't want my kid going up to Murder Mountain if there's no repercussions. I mean, it's a lawless community. Go ahead, turn off the police for a day. See how your community survives.
Absolutely,
I dare you. You know, if you knew that it would be the purge. That's what it'd be. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Shannon, thanks so much for coming on and sharing the bird's eye level or the ground view level of Humboldt. And I'm glad, Swanny, that you recruited him, because, you know, you see Murder Mountain and the stories that are told, and you have one picture, but it's a completely different picture when you hear about someone who, both of you, you know, grew up or in and around it, and now are seeing how the state legislation and the 215 and the legalization is all impacting not only the marijuana grow, but the community and the families surrounding that area. So thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, Swanny, and why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Adios, arrivederci, sayonara, au revoir, and cyanide. Cyanide? That's goodbye in any language.
And I will see you, I'll see you at the local Garberville store, right?
Cyanide, cyanide, cyanide. That's goodbye in any language.
Down upon the Swanny River. Let me give some shout outs here. Quadcast Courtney. I think that's the name. You know I love you. I